All right, so thank you very much, my brother. So our podcast and the theme for this week is Voice for a Change, and this podcast is being powered by Sonic in Zambia, and we also have a phone on promotion called Easy2. Right. So for more details, we'll have the link down there that you can follow and find out more about the phone. So getting back to the topic of this week, which is a voice for a change, we'll engage ourselves in the topic called solitude. Okay, so the question is, what is solitude?
Exactly.
What do we know about solitude? So I will let my brother here give us a glimpse, so rather a summary of what solitude is, and then we'll dig deeper after that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dino, for this wonderful opportunity. You know, according to my understanding, solitude is one of the fundamental factors that we need for a youth that is trying to be creative, that is trying to self-search and find all these things that will bring out the best of all individuals, specifically the youth. So to my own understanding, solitude is a very important aspect of life, in the sense that most of the times, especially in this generation, there's so much distraction. We've got social media, we've got all these influences, but when do we ever sit down by ourselves and find out who we really are? Should say, what's my talent? What do I want to do in this life, you know? How do I reach that? And I feel like the time that we spend alone, most of the times, a lot of creative process takes place. You know, there's no much disturbances, no much distractions. You get to find, because I've had conversations with some youths that tell you to say, I don't know what my talent is. You don't know what your talent is because you've not taken the time to self-search. What do you think?
I think you're right, because check, we venture much of our time in attending seminars, meetings, just so we find answers. But you will not really find answers of who you are there. Instead, they can only give you an overview of what happens generally in the world. But for one to understand themselves, for one to uncover their hidden talents, I feel we should have that intention of being alone. We should not use solitude as fear, but that feeling of being alone itself triggers solitude. But what happens when solitude is triggered?
True.
Yeah. So one will be helped with discovering their hidden talents. Like my brother made mention to say, there's so much distraction in this modern world.
True.
Okay. So we spend much of our time on the phone, maybe chatting with people, watching videos and all that. But do we take time to understand ourselves? Self-discovery, for instance, is very important. So a solitude, if used very carefully, can be a very powerful tool.
Yeah, it is.
So we should not be scared, worse than we should have a misconception of solitude for loneliness. So being alone should be a choice. And then loneliness is something that comes in when the mind is idle. So when you utilize that time properly, worse than you ask yourself to say, yes, I was given these names, they're not just names, but there's an aspect of spiritualism. Who is that person? What is thinking? Where do thoughts come from? Who am I?
That's true.
What plans am I going to make?
Yeah, what plans?
Yeah, because in this case, let's give a scenario of people in the Bible. So you'll find that many religious people in the Bible, for instance, John the Baptist, when he was exiled from the land of Patmos, he used that time being alone to write books, scriptures. Yeah. For so long he was with these other people, he was not going to really be inspired by the Holy Ghost. He was not going to have time to reflect on himself. Yeah. He was going to be distracted by the crowd of people. Yeah. So they used the time that they were alone to do what? To write books, to pray. Even Jesus himself, when he wanted to pray and to have time to speak to God, he secluded himself from the.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, and then to add on that, according to statistics, the famous 2019 coronavirus, a lot of creatives were born and made after that period. Why? Most people found out who they were because of that solitude. They were not necessarily, as you said, it's loneliness. No, if you decide to make it loneliness, it will be loneliness. But then during that time, you now are centered to say, okay, this is what I have on the plate. How do I build it? And I feel like roots of everything are very important. And the sooner youth realize, as you said, solitude should not be replaced with loneliness. It's time to self-search and reflect. By the way, this episode is sponsored by Sunkin, yours truly.